Would you say that the material that we have in question, that we think by comparing the oldest documents, as we compare those that have come down the pike, that there's some additions, even if we say that that is in argument, that that is something we have to take a look at, would you say that therefore it has changed the truth, the message of the Bible?
No, not at all. That's the amazing fact about preservation. This was something that a Roman Catholic scholar, Richard Simon, argued against Protestants. He said, you have a paper pope. He said, look at all these variants. They changed the text. And so one of them began to get to work on it. John Mill worked on this. J.A. Bengel worked on it. Other strong evangelical conservative Christians began to look at the variants, and they said, we don't find any doctrine affected by these variants. So
Right.
what's the problem here?
How many manuscripts, texts have come down to us, copies for the New Testament?
We have approximately 5,400 of them.
Okay. Now,
In Greek, that is.
all right. Let me give the audience an example. I think they can understand that. I'm coming to you, Ken. That is, let's take a verse like John 3:16, and this is not necessarily true or false, but just an example. If I quote, "For God so loved the world, He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish but have everlasting life." Good old King James. Okay? And we have, would you say, 5,400 manuscripts? 5,400?
We don't have that many in John. We have about 2,000 that cover
Okay.
John.
Let's say you got 2,000 that you're looking at, and of the 2,000, you've got 1,900 of them that have just the way I said it, and then you've got the others that have a textual variant that say it this way. God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. Okay? Those manuscripts left out the word "for." Okay? So, now textual criticism has a way of saying what should be in there, for or not. But I want to go to the broader question. Does that mean that because we have that variant, that we don't know what John said about "for God so loved the world"? I don't think so. Right. And I think that's what we're talking about. Those variants that a lot of times the scholars say not one of them has anything to do that'll affect Christian doctrine.
Right.
Okay? But now I want to come to this question, and Art, you haven't talked for a while here. Let's get into this. You have the New King James. Don, you've got NASB. Art, you have, or Ken, you're over here with the NIV. And the guys in the last program said, God basically hasn't given proof that you got the real Bible because He ain't using it.
God has used many Bibles. He used the Septuagint as a key to bringing the Old Testament faith to the Gentiles and a bridge to the New Testament. And for years, the Greeks had the whole Bible in Greek. God used the Vulgate for 1,000 years.
Which is the Latin version.
The Latin version. In fact, I read it in my devotions every other week because I happen to like Latin. It doesn't give me any extra points, but it's a good Bible. And God used the Luther Bible for the German-speaking world, and the Geneva. The people who founded America did not use the King James, they used the Geneva. They thought the King James was too high church. It said church instead of congregation and bishop instead of overseers. The Pilgrims and Puritans of Plymouth Colony didn't use the King James. The foundation of our country was on the Geneva Bible.
Wait, no, the foundation of the country was 1776.
Well, you're talking about politics. I'm talking about spiritual base. Everyone who's conservative looks back to...
The reason I say this, I've got a book on some American history called The Myth of Separation. There are quotes from some of the founding fathers of this country, and they're King James quotes. They're not Geneva.
Of course they're King James in the 1700s, but I'm going to the year that they landed in 1620.
Right.
I mean, I don't read the Geneva.
The men that sat down and founded this nation, the men that sat down and chose the direction of this country were not just the Puritans.
Oh, I realize that, but I'm talking about the initial people.
This, again, sets up this false construct that if you only quote from the King James, that's the perfect Bible. If they had quoted from the Geneva, it's imperfect. As a matter of fact, there's going to be so much agreement between those two that when they quote, it may well be the Geneva they're quoting from.
But the Geneva Bible was based on the traditional text, and that's my point.
Yeah, well, I have no problem with that, but I mean, and just saying, to say that God was not well represented on the planet until 1611, that is just plain wrong and unhistorical